Hello, everybody out there in radio land. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. As always, following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 WIDR or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may turn out to be. So we're going to hit the ground running. We've got a lot to talk about on today's show. It's been a heck of a week since we were here last Tuesday. I'm joined now by Euan from Southwest Michigan DSA, and we're going to take just a few minutes to talk about the incredible rally that happened last night here in Kalamazoo. I was able to make it around 7 o'clock. I was contesting with some ice on the way home from Grand Rapids. That's maybe kind of late for the ice rally, but um, as I was saying, hundreds of people showed up. I think I've been doing kind of community organizing work, and we've been doing the show for about 10 years now, and I literally have never seen so many people down for a city commission meeting, both for ice and of course preservation of the Asylum Lake Preserve. I invited you in on to talk because it was Southwest Michigan DSA that really took the impetus to organize something around ICE. Again, right in the wake of another state-sanctioned murder over in Minneapolis. And one, I want to tip of the hat for Southwest Michigan DSA for taking the initiative to organize something around what just happened. And I wanted to ask you, Ewan, again, could you walk us through, one, deciding to organize this rally and your impressions of kind of the incredible turnout that we saw yesterday down at City Hall?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on. Yeah, I mean, yesterday was incredible. It was incredible to see so many people come out for essentially, a really sad reason. We didn't expect a couple of weeks ago, the community got together and had an ice rally, and there was the general assumption that there would be another one again. We just didn't expect another one to happen so quickly in reaction to another murder in Minneapolis. But to have about 300 community members there to show up in the incredibly cold weather as well, to be able to stand there in community and to show the city commission, especially that we demand from them that they take proactive measures to help protect our community from ICE. I think this was really important for us to say is that we believe as a community that our defense against ICE really starts at the local level, and that starts with our local politicians and with community. And I think yesterday we saw that community is ready and able and to come together and defeat and fight against ICE. Now we just need the city commission to have the same type of enthusiasm and to show that same level of commitment.
Just as a quick follow-up question, I did see a lot of people in the citizens' comments, people, or was it residents' comments? Yeah, citizens' comments, bring up the flock cameras, which I know this is an issue that the local DSA has been organizing around in the past. How do you think, what we've been seeing, the increased fascist overreach of ICE in Minneapolis? How do you think maybe that's brought that issue to the forefront in a way that maybe it wasn't previously?
Yeah, no, I mean, when we were talking about when us as a chapter, as a local organization, have been thinking about how do we defend our community against ICE, we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic that there's only so much we can do. And we identified these flock cameras, which if your listeners don't know, those are automatic license plate reading cameras. They basically, when you drive past them, to take a snapshot of your license plate, stores it in this CD database in Silicon Valley somewhere that's hypothetically only accessible to KDPS employees, but in reality, it's sitting on a server and can be accessed by God knows who for God knows what reasons. For us, the reason we focus so much on this particular demand is because for us, this is a material way in which the city of Kalamazoo can protect our community. These cameras have already been used by ICE and federal agencies to track down immigrants, to track down political dissidents, to track down women who have abortions, to hunt them down and to arrest them for crimes or so-called crimes. This is a system that our city is investing more money into, is really kind of KDPS are running it as a public safety tool. And when we're here to say, actually, no, it's not. This is going to be used against us. This is going to be used to hunt down and tear apart families in our community. And this is really a simple way in which the city can take a small action of just deciding not to subscribe to this mass surveillance system and take meaningful steps towards protecting our community against ICE. Because they're more than happy to sit in there in the chambers and say, this isn't really a local issue. This is beyond us. There's only so much we can do, which is true to an extent. I don't expect the city of Kalamazoo to, make a public declaration saying, abolish ICE, and we're going to be using all our resources to make that happen. I'm realistic about that. But the removing of the flock cameras for us is a simple, easy first step to show that they're committed to protecting this community against these federal thugs.
Yeah, of course. And I wanted to pivot really quickly to talk about something. I know this is something that, particular knowing you and, going to DSA meetings, something that has been the point of a lot of discussion is the concept of a general strike, and logistics involved, planning into it. I know for longtime listeners, you probably know there's been a lot of the big unions in this country have been talking about a big 2028 strike. Um, However, we in something that almost got swallowed up in the news cycle was the fact that the people of Minneapolis basically did a proof of concept, just a few days ago. It was wildly successful in a way that I think even a lot of the people who have been planning it did not quite expect. The city effectively shut down for 24 hours. And I wanted to kind of pick your brain about, obviously, this is something we've thought about a lot. And I wanted to get your impression on kind of your thoughts and responses to the 1 day general strike that happened in Minneapolis, and also maybe just more conceptually. We talk a lot about the power of the general strike to get economic demands out of the capitalist class. But I was wondering if you had thoughts on the way the general strike can be deployed as a bulwark against the increasingly overt fascism that we're seeing from the Trump administration.
Yeah, I think, the scenes that we saw in Minneapolis on January 23rd were beautiful. And I think you're right. I think, what we're seeing now in the last couple of hours, really, we're seeing ICE and federal agencies pull back from Minneapolis. And the fact of the matter is that's because the working people of Minneapolis made them do that. Not politicians, not national politicians, nor local politicians. It was because on January 23rd, the working people of Minneapolis showed their power by essentially shutting the city down, which had a real economic effect. And I think, part of the reason that even though people in our spaces saw the images of thousands of people on the streets in bitter cold, walking hand in hand to say enough is enough. We're shutting the city down until, our demands are met, until this federal agency is out of our city. But, the reason the mainstream media didn't really latch onto that is because I think it gives a good proof of concept to the rest of us as something that we can do in our own communities in the future. At the end of the day, as history has shown us again and again and again, the number one agent of change around the world, especially against oppressive regimes like the Trump administration, is working people. It's the working class. And I think the January 23rd strike in Minneapolis or Minnesota was a fantastic example that as a class, as a group of people, we can work together and make real change that is far more impactful than just ticking a box on the ballot box every now and then.
Absolutely. And just as a bit of just to let everybody know, the other thing that drove people to that meeting yesterday was the Asylum Lake Preserve, and that rezoning request has been successfully denied. And I do really want to give a lot of credit to a lot of the people. Again, hundreds of people wrote in letters of condemnation at that particular potential rezoning, and everybody who came up to talk on the dais. A lot of times when where there have been instances where I've seen two different issues, or ostensibly seen as two different issues, are up on the dais, and one kind of takes certain weight over the other. Almost everybody I saw go up spoke out on both and really tied it into an issue of citizens democracy. Like hundreds of us showed up today in this very cold weather, and we are asking you to, this is clearly the will of the people, and we're asking you to exercise that. So big kudos to everybody who turned out last night for both ICE and to protect Asylum Lake. So Euan, with that, I know again this has been very busy times. for the Southwest Michigan DSA. If people want to get more involved with your chapter, your organization, how would they do that?
Yeah, I guess the easiest way is to find us on just on the web, I guess. Go to our website. It's SWMIDSA.com. And there's a whole bunch of links and stuff you can get involved with that. We have our regular meetings once a month at Edison Neighborhood Association. So you can come and check that out. Those are usually on the fourth Sundays. And yeah, we're a socialist organization, but don't let that put you off. We're a big tent socialist organization. If you think, hey, something's got to change. Something is fundamentally wrong with not just this immigration problem or this environmental issue, but with the entire system itself. That's what we're about. That's what we're about. We believe all these battles are interconnected, ultimately through the way our society is arranged, and we want to change that. We want to give more power to the people. So definitely check us out at swmidsa.com.
Oh, absolutely. And as I remind my listeners ad nauseum, socialism, the workers seizing the means of production, which in kind of modern layman's is, workers having control of their workplaces and their communities. So if you think workers should run the world, guess what? I've got some news for you. You might be a socialist. And it would do you good to hook up with some other socialists. Thank you, Ewan, taking time out of your day. And again, for your organization, taking the kind of the pivotal vanguard role in getting everything together yesterday. You have an excellent and warm one. Stay safe. It's very, very cold and slippery out there, folks.
Thanks very much. Have a great day.
All right, you too. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find us online at Media Cyphers on Facebook, YouTube, or the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast. Keep your eye on lock. This is Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution. So anyway, kind of moving on, let's talk a little bit about I wanted to talk about some of the impacts that things like last night's protest is already having. For those who haven't heard, Greg Bovino has been kind of soft fired or demoted. He is no longer going to be on the ground in Minneapolis. We have a statement coming from the president talking about, I had a very nice conversation with Mr. Tim Waltz. Tim Waltz is a great guy, blah, blah, blah. And we are looking at, it does look like the federal government is, knock on wood, at least for the time being, backing off ever so slightly, which, as Euan put a fine point on in our discussion, is the result of people exercising their economic and political leverage. And I wanted to kind of bring it back to here at the local level. Bill Huizenga, who obviously we've critiqued Bill Huizenga a lot. He was even more conservative and openly Trumpian than Fred Upton, who was our representative for a number of years here. We're not big fans of Huizenga, but I want to read this story because I think it really shows what public pressure can do, even against some of these politicians who align themselves with the Trump administration. This is from Michigan Advance, written by Catherine Daly. Huizenga calls for congressional hearings on ICE action in Minnesota. This is published just yesterday on the 26th. Bill Huizenga, Republican in our congressional district, took to social media on Sunday night to call on Congress to conduct hearings on federal law enforcement, specifically ICE in Minnesota, as well as on the organized opposition to federal law enforcement. While emotions are no doubt high, a congressional hearing is a place where federal, state, and local community leaders can be heard. I believe Congress can conduct oversight and lead a facts-based discussion, he wrote in a post on X. Now, of course, this is the most mealy-mouthed repudiation of the terrorism being exercised by our government on the people of Minnesota. And of course, the organized opposition to law enforcement, of course, is a little bit of meat to the Trumpian base. That is framing a lot of this as like, why are these people organizing against ICE, against the government? Well, well, maybe because they're terrorizing their neighborhoods. That's a thought. But you have seen that particular spin from some right-wing commentators and outlets, kind of pointing out again, this whole chicken and the egg thing, this kind of fake um, uh, what's the word? A shock at how communities are organized or organizing in Minneapolis. There was a recent leak of some signal chats that Minneapolis residents were using to coordinate opposition to ICE. And some of the responses from Republicans are very eye-opening. There was a lot of envy, a lot of discussion about how, like, we could never match this level of organization. A lot of people thought, it was too well organized, that it had to be organized by communist China. Or something like that. Um, Even some people suggesting that the mutual aid that people were organizing amongst themselves was somehow being funded by China, George Soros, whatever conspiracy theory you want, which I think is illustrative and should give us some degree of hope. These people seem to be completely oblivious to models of organizing that are grassroots, that are not top down, that are not funded by Turning Point USA or, Larry Ellison or Palantir, et cetera, et cetera. Which really should give you us like some. I know we always talk about like left wing infighting and stuff, but when the chips are down, it is encouraging that not just, dyed in the wool leftists, but ordinary working people know how to spontaneously organize themselves in a way that makes reactionaries extremely puzzled and in a state of disbelief. Again, oh, it has to be organized by communist China or George Soros or something like that. Going on in the article, Huizenga's call came just a day after federal agents shot and killed Alex Pretti in Minneapolis, the second killing by federal immigration agents since the start of 2026. I would actually contest that. I think there's been more, but I digress. I guess New Year's Eve was technically last year, but anyway. Huizenga has now joined a small group of Republicans calling for increased oversight of ICE actions, including GOP Senators Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who have all called for independent probes into Pretty's killing. Murkowski said on Sunday, Politico reported ICE agents do not have carte blanche in carrying out their duties. Republicans on the House Homeland Security Committee have also called for testimony from leaders at ICE, along with Customs and Border Patrol and U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services leadership. While Huizenga does not sit on that committee, he reposted the GOP caucus's announcement of that request. Huizenga's post comes as Michigan's Democratic U.S. Senators Alyssa Slotkin and Gary Peters have both said they will not vote to renew funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees both ICE and U.S. Customs and Border Patrol following Saturday's fatal shooting, which, by the way, is also a direct result of public pressure. It wasn't but a week ago that 7 Democrats in the House voted to continue funding ICE. And there was a political commentator who described it really well. A lot of these centrist Democrats don't really have principles so much as they operate as a weather vane and they go where the winds are blowing. And the response to ICE's Gestapo thuggery in Minneapolis has been basically a gale force wind. So even Democrats who are historically pro-ICE or try to hedge to the center are finally understanding that they need to grow some cojones on this issue because the pressure from their base is just so intense. And again, that is something that we can credit to all of us who are engaging in collective resistance to what ICE is doing. I actually wanted to read another article kind of on a related issue, also from Michigan Advance. This is an op-ed from John King, also published on January 26th. John King is the editor-in-chief of Michigan Advance, which is a progressive news magazine about Michigan news and events. Headline of this is, when Michigan Republicans threaten courts, they're preparing our state for federal abuse. Before Michigan ever sees federal officers flood our streets, before another video shocks the conscience, the warning signs are already here, and they are coming from inside our own state government. As Michigan Advance reported last week, a group of Michigan House Republicans has now openly threatened the funding of state courts if the Michigan Supreme Court adopts a rule that would have the effect of limiting most immigration arrests in courthouses. In other words, lawmakers are signaling that judicial independence itself is conditional and that courts will be punished for attempting to protect basic access to justice. This is not a side issue, it is the canary in the coal mine. Courts are where people go to comply with the law. Threatening to turn those spaces into traps or to defund them for refusing to do so is not about public safety or law and order. It is about coercion, and it tells us exactly how unprepared Michigan Republicans are to meet a moment when federal power is increasingly exercised without restraint. That context matters because the apparent murder of Alex Pretti in Minneapolis should end any lingering illusion that what is happening elsewhere cannot happen here. Video evidence shows Pretti stepping in to help two women who were being maced by federal immigration officers. For that act, he was set upon by officers, beaten, and disarmed of a weapon he was illegally licensed to carry. All evidence indicates he never brandished that gun, but at least one federal agent shot him to death. Whatever euphemisms are offered in the days ahead, what the public saw was not restraint. It was escalation, and it should force a reckoning well beyond Minneapolis. Michigan must be ready to respond to a similar surge by the Trump administration here. Ready does not mean issuing statements after the fact. Ready means our leaders deciding now where they will stand and what they will do when federal power arrives without restraint and demands compliance. The hardest question for our leaders is also the most personal. Are we prepared, like Alex Pretti, to place their bodies between what has clearly become an unrestrained mob and our fellow citizens? That question isn't rhetorical. It's a measure of civic courage, and it does not apply only to people in the street. It applies to those in office, those with badges, and those with microphones. This is where the threat to court funding becomes impossible to ignore. When Michigan Republicans threaten to kneecap the judiciary for resisting ICE arrests and courthouses, they are not merely posturing. They are laying the groundwork for complacency. They are signaling that when federal abuses come, they will not defend the institutions meant to check them. They will discipline those institutions instead. This from the same crowd that insistently intones that immigrants must follow the law and come here the right way. Arresting people in courtrooms, a place they have come specifically to follow the law, exposes the lie at the heart of the so-called law and order movement. If compliance becomes the danger, then law and order has nothing to do with justice and everything to do with intimidation. But this moment does not give Democrats an automatic pass. Opposition cannot be selective or symbolic. Senator Alyssa Slotkin has said she will not vote to fund the Department of Homeland Security when the issue comes up later this week. That is good to hear. It shows awareness of the stakes, but it must be a starting point, not the entirety of the response. Michigan faces a choice. We can tell ourselves the killing of Alex Pretti was an aberration, or we can acknowledge the reality in front of us. Federal power escalating without restraint, and political leaders here seemingly prepared to excuse it. Threatening to defund the courts is not a warning sign, it is the decision itself. Michigan's leaders will either defend the rule of law before it is broken here, or they will help normalize its collapse. Silence will not be mistaken for neutrality. It will be remembered as consent. Again, that was an article from Michigan Advance. When Michigan Republicans threaten courts, they're preparing our state for federal abuse. I wanted to speak just a little bit on that last point there, where he's talking about, Michigan must be ready to respond to a similar surge. Kalamazoo has been put in the crosshairs of these reactionary movements before. I think it is not worth it is worth remembering in 2020 when the Proud Boys descended upon Arcadia Creek Festival site. That was a direct response to, and this is kind of silly to say, being embarrassed on social media by a Kalamazoo resident. That's why they decided to do their little brown shirt parade through our town. A little bit later on, a few years ago, Kalamazoo was talking about decriminalizing public urination, basically making it a misdemeanor, or you're basically lowering the punishment for it. And for whatever reason, Tucker Carlson decided to hone in on this particular issue, and Kalamazoo became the center of right-wing trolling for about 2 weeks. In particular, City Commissioner Chris Pradell, who Tucker Carlson played on national television and openly ridiculed. He was got many calls and hate mails and all that. So the idea that's this game of whack-a-mole that the Trump administration is playing, moving from city to city, trying to figure out a place they can get away with this crap. Um, to think Kalamazoo is too small or off the radar for that to happen here is a mistake. And in fact, it may be a strategic pivot not so far in the future for the Trump administration to start focusing on smaller cities that they perceive do not have the same amount of people power to fight back. Of course, if such a thing happens, I think much like in 2020, we will give the fascists the bum's rush. But it is something that I think we should understand from our own local experience that um, it only take one right-wing troll to make Sauron's eye fall upon Kalamazoo, and we could be in for a situation much like our comrades in Los Angeles and Chicago and Minneapolis have had to deal with. And it is up to us to prepare and be ready. And it is up to the city commission to decide to what extent they are going to resist um, federal fascism, or at the very least, step out of the people's way. One thing I was very critical, even Tim Waltz, he brought in the National Guard, but ostensibly, this is to protect property. They were clustered around the federal building and Target Center and stuff like that. They were so afraid of the potential of broken windows and people having a riot, that is the way they'd apply those resources. Now, who's to say Kalamazoo? Very similarly, when the National Guard was deployed here in 2020, it was in response to a couple of broken windows. So, who's to say, Kalamazoo asks for the National Guard, and they're clustered on the Kalamazoo Mall, while ICE roams around our neighborhoods unchecked, um, believing that they have a license to kill. Anyway, I will link to that article in the show notes. We're going to take another quick little break. Y'all are listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. You can also find us online at Media Cyphers on Facebook, YouTube, and the Media Cyphers Kalamazoo podcast you can find on most podcasting sites. Keep your dial locked as Media Cyphers, your source for political revolution. Hello, everybody. We are back. Y'all listening to Media Cyphers only on 89.1 WIDR or online at widerfm.org. I'm joined by my co-host, Lawrence. Lawrence, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Flair. How are you?
Oh, good, good, good. So we spent most of the first hour talking about, again, like, the ICE demonstration in Kalamazoo, some of the fallout here at the state level. We're going to spend some more time talking about it. It's a really big story. Um, and I know like so much has happened in the last week that we didn't even really get a chance to hit on. Um, Lawrence, did you say you had something you want to start off with, or did you want me to kind of start paving the runway?
Well, yeah, no, we can do a little bit of both. I did want to say shout out to everybody that did go out last night to protest to let our uh representatives know that we do not appreciate or want ICE in our country. I mean, in our city, we do not. We do
Oh,
not.
that too. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's always abolish ICE. You know what I'm saying? But also, we don't want them here, right? We don't want them in Kalamazoo, right? And also, I want to give a special shout out since we have time to Christine McDonald Rivent, right, from Michigan's 8th, Cherie Thanadar from Michigan's 13th, um, and what was it? Haley Stevens of Michigan's 11th, right? These are some of the Democrats that these are some of the 70 Democrats who voted to express gratitude to ICE in 2025, right?
Yeah.
And those are the homegrown terrorists that we need to make sure that we vote out of office because they are people who capitulate and suck the boot of fascism. So
Mhm.
that's Haley Stevens in 11. These are Democrats. We know the Republicans are all troglodytes, right? We already know that the Republicans are all bootlicking mongrels. These are the Democrats. These are people that we can affect, that our constituents can vote out. Should make sure that we are voting out. So yes, all the Republicans need to get voted out. But yes, a special attention needs to be paid to Haley Stevens in Michigan's 11th, Sharif Danadar in Michigan's 13th, and Christine McDonald Rivet, or whatever her last name is, in Michigan's 8th. Those three in particular.
Yeah, so some was it Hall of Shame or Donkey of the Day
Yeah,
or however you want to put it.
whenever you see them in public, you shame them for supporting ICE, for giving. Ask them, do they still have gratitude that they want to express to ICE? Ask them, do they still support ICE? Ask them, will they be happy when ICE comes to Michigan and comes to their cities? Ask them. Ask them how will their constituents feel when ICE comes to their neck of the woods, especially someone like Sharif Danadar. Do you think they're going to care that Cherie is an American citizen?
Because again, from what we've seen in Minneapolis, basically anybody who they think needs a complexion correction is getting scooped up, at least from what we've seen reported on the ground.
Dog, it's the Family Guy meme, right? It's the Family Guy meme with Peter, and it was like white guy terror. Anything that's a shade darker than lightly toasted white bread is is
Yeah.
man. And so we also just a real quick hit. Um, I know you talked about the protests, and uh, again we keep saying this is nothing new. This is things that Black and Brown communities have had to deal with from police before, and now it's just hitting middle American white people. But even still, you see the dismissiveness and and privilege that certain folks in this country have at their just indifference on what's going on in the world. I think a good case in point was the conversation that we had about the church that got protested,
Oh yeah.
right? So for those who didn't catch the story, and this is just a real quick hit, um, there was a pastor that was also in St. Paul. There was a pastor of a church who just so happens to also be a field director for ICE. He is a in leadership and in management of the Gestapo, and he's a pastor. Some activists, Don Lemon went and Don Lemon was there, and how our government is trying to go after Don Lemon is another part of the story that we have to talk about if you care about journalism
I
and
think
media.
we've talked a lot on the show about like the the cognitive dissonance that has to exist for this sort of fake strain of white nationalist Christianity. But like it's like you couldn't put a finer point on it. Like a pastor
Yeah,
who is in ICE, like good Lord, this is like,
that's bad enough, right? But it reflects, and the thing, the reason why I'm still bringing it up is that we just had Martin Luther King Day, right? And we always talk about the letter from a Birmingham jail, how white moderates, Martin Luther King said that white moderates are a bigger detriment to liberation than the outward Klansman or the person that's in governmental leadership or in governmental bodies, right? The clerk, right? The the parishioners, and this is also as a Christian, when we talk about the reason why Southern Christian is different than their Northern Christian counterparts, it's because during the time of the Civil War, during the time of Reconstruction, during the time of Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement, Southern Christians made a point to not care about what was happening to the other people in their communities. They just want to worship the Lord in the way that they saw fit, right? Not actually applying the teachings of Christ to their fellow man, but they did not feel affected by what was going on, so they did not care, right? They just wanted to go to church and worship. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because what did some of those parishioners say to Don Lemon and some of the media when the protest came? Hey, we are not attached to the stuff that's going on outside. We're not here for that. We're just here for the Lord, right?
Mm-hmm.
The indifference to the suffering of those that are around you, and you have the privilege of just saying, I don't want to get into it. I just want to come here and go to church. That is the thing that Martin Luther King talked about in real time. In real time. The indifference of certain Christians that until it actually affects them, that they do not care. It's right wing brain rot.
Mm-hmm. And as I recall, there's this figure in Christianity. Have you ever heard the story? There's this long-haired socialist who went into a church with a whip because they were doing like commerce in the church. Have you ever heard about this? I don't know.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Jesus would have Jesus would have looked at those parishioners and would have said to them, all of you disgust me. You are not. I said, if you are not doing things for the least of thee, then you're not doing things in my name. This is literally a part of the parable that he gave about the sheep and the goats, right? That uh that Jesus said, I want my followers to be more like the sheep. That when I was a stranger in a strange land, when I was a stranger in a strange land, you did not forget about me. When I was locked up in jail, you made sure that I was not forgotten. When I was sick, you healed me. When I was hungry, that you fed me. When I was homeless, that you sheltered me. Right? These things of giving onto those who do not have. This is what the immigrant, when you're supposed to be charitable to the immigrant or the others who are coming into your community. That spirit is what Jesus talked about. You cannot have a lack of empathy for other human beings and still call yourself Christian. You cannot have a lack of empathy and call yourself American. The Statue of Liberty says, bring me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to break free. The entire basis of what that entire speech is about is the entire basis of the Statue of Liberty and that entire ideology that we're supposed to be upholding as Americans is liberating those from bondage, welcoming those who do not have, and expressing empathy, sympathy, and generosity for those who want to come here for a better life. That is the bare minimum standard and foundation that we are supposed to have as Americans. Forget your religion. As Americans,
Mm-hmm.
you are antithetical to everything that Americans should believe in when you have that type of cognitive dissonance. Sorry for my rant.
Oh, no, no, no. I wanted to I think that's a good opportunity to springboard on. Well, I guess we could talk about the limits of cognitive dissonance. In a very interesting uh, thing that happened in the aftermath of the murder of Alex Pretti. I want to talk a little bit about like the whole discourse that's been going on around the Second Amendment. And
Or
yeah,
the
so here's a really interesting thing, and it exposes the disdain I think that Trump and his administration have even for their own base. And what I mean by this is, I think Trump was able to seize on certain pathologies in the American far right to attain power. But I think something that was and is still very alien to him is American gun culture. I don't think he has any innate understanding of it. You heard him come out and say like only criminals carry guns. You heard like um, Kash Patel talking about like you cannot bring a gun to a protest. And what was interesting was not necessarily even just some of the usual voices they're standing up, but like a lot of conservatives were Tim he lost Tim Pool. Tim Pool was say like was legally able to own that gun. Dana Loesch, who is a
in our
right wing reactionary by any stretch, was arguing with administration sycophants on Twitter, defending again the right to carry arms. Liber and libertarian groups across the country were saying in a very unified voice, abolish ICE. Even things like the Mrs. Caucus, which is kind of their most reactionary wing, were saying like abolish ICE, right to bear arms. Why I bring up libertarians, because I know like that's a very, you might say like, Andy, that's not like they're a very small group. Why would you even bring them up? And the main reason I do is like even though they're small as a political party, most Americans are some cosmic gumbo combination of like kind of libertarian and like grassroots socialist points of view. So I feel like they are a much better barometer of what a large swath of Americans think about this issue. And just breaking today, a lot of people have made a comparison to Kyle Rittenhouse. Well, the Pillsbury murder boy himself actually came out on social media and basically said everybody has the right to open carry, shall not be infringed, etc. Um, and well, I wanted to kind of drill down into this because it's a very interesting phenomena of like Trump again being so far away from his own base on a topic that it is crumbling his own coalition. It's very similar to what happened with the Epstein files, which is still a very contentious idea among even some of the most loyal elements of his base. They for the last 10 years, Pizzagate, Save the Children, all of this has been an article of faith for the far right for 10 years. You can't just dismiss it out of hand because it's become personally inconvenient to you. The same goes for this issue. The Second Amendment suddenly became very inconvenient for an administration that wants to have the right to disarm citizens at will who do not agree with its ideology. However, and again, there are people in the Trump cult who will just you say bark or you say jump, how high, Mr. Trump? I'm gonna sacrifice my principles for you. There's been a lot of bots and stuff, but there's also been a lot of these very same people. And I know this speaking as somebody who grew up in a household that was like kind of militia adjacent. My dad, he was a single issue voter, and it was all about gun control. And part of that is because for not just 10 years, but decades and decades, the specter of gun abolition and taking away your guns has been drilled into the heads of people in this country. So when the president starts saying if you carry a gun around and you're a criminal, or Kash Patel says, well, you can't carry a gun to the protest, though that like it creates it's like a code 404 error. It's just you shall not be infringed repeating, and they cannot go along with what the administration is saying. It is too deeply ingrained, and I think that's a big part of why the administration has to back off a little bit and realize they cannot make that particular dog hunt. Their base is not going to go for this. And it's interesting to see that like even some of the more liberal outlets are now starting to it's like, well, it's a Second Amendment right to carry a gun with. So it's been very
Yeah,
interesting to see the way again the way the Trump administration's own just aloof detachment from where their base is at on certain issues has it, as it says in Pokemon, it hurt itself in its confusion. But Lawrence, go ahead.
Dog, yes, and right. I never want to go. I don't want to be that person and be like, man, yeah, they. I feel like maybe this is just my own perspective. We have gotten to a point where it makes more sense for that it was the Republicans that has destroyed the concept of the Second Amendment. I want to also remind y'all that we live in Michigan. When the COVID lockdowns went down, right wing militias went to the state with guns. I also want to remind everybody that the reason why California and other places started to have stricter gun control was because of the Black Panther Party and people of color starting to get weaponry. And now the same people who praise Kyle Rittenhouse, they praise George George Zimmerman, right? They celebrated these people. They celebrated January 6th folks who brought guns to the Capitol. They celebrated these folks. Are now the same people being like, yeah, our ICE officers are so weak and are so weak and so fragile that they cannot deal with others, Americans, using their Second Amendment rights, right? When Trump said, hey, maybe the Second Amendment people can deal with Hillary Clinton. You remember this? You remember when he
Yeah, oh
said
yeah,
that?
that's right. Yeah.
Right? So it is obviously it's disgusting. Obviously it's disgusting. It's not even close, right? But it it it's the fact that they are so hypocritical should not be surprising. It shouldn't be surprising. And now, and again, we've
Can I
had
just
multiple discussions.
interject real quick?
Right.
I think it's important to understand, like, that's not new either. The Second Amendment for me and not for thee. I think a lot of people, there's confusion around what the initial intent of the Second Amendment was. And I think people need to understand, even a lot says, well, it's to like overthrow a tyrannical government. But you have to understand the context in which the Second Amendment was written. The Second Amendment was primarily like well-armed militias. And sometimes the liberals will point to this and say, well, it doesn't mean like every citizen can have an AR. And they're not quite correct on that either. What those well-regulated militias were designed to do on the outset of the Constitution was two things: carry out the project of colonization with their guns, and engage in slave patrols with their guns. The Second Amendment was never quite met with indigenous and black and abolitionist people in mind. Now that is not to say that you can't use the letter of the Constitution to defend those certain things, but I think people should not get it twisted. The intent behind the Second Amendment was not necessarily to overthrow a tyrannical government; it was to expedite the project of colonization. So people should understand, like, yeah, it's hypocritical to say Second Amendment for me, but not for thee. But it is also, I mean, I guess you could argue a little bit closer to what the founding fathers intended. This
I
is
mean,
why I say don't necessarily lean on the Constitution as a moral justification for all these questions about gun ownership.
yeah, like dog, it was always designed to protect scared white people from the others. The others are usually black and brown people. That's That's what it was designed to be. Not that not that it was actually this, right? Uh not that it was actually true, because the people who are most likely to harm you in this country look like the Kyle Rittenhouses. There's the Kyle Rittenhouses. Uh, I think for me my issue is that now now those people don't have an excuse, right? You don't you you don't have the excuse of they can't use that excuse to justify the unarmed murder of black and brown people no more. No, they're using it for you. They're using it for average white Americans. And then that means they will also use it for conservatives when the police start hurting them. And I think we had this conversation last week. The don't tread on me gun nut homosexual people, now all of them have joined ICE. The majority of them have joined ICE. There are a few that haven't. And the ones that haven't are the ones that are now being like, bro, what are y'all talking about? We take guns everywhere. I mean, I remember, what was it, the Bundy Ranch standoff, right?
Yeah, that is a good comparison.
Right? You had the Bundy Ranch standoff, and you had those ranchers who pointing guns at federal officials. By that logic, those federal officials should have popped off and wiped out all of them.
They were definitely brandishing, talking
Yeah,
about brandishing or not brandishing,
brandishing a weapon, right? I mean, again, these are the same people who said Ashley Babbitt was a hero, and Ashley Babbitt and the other people who were yelling "Kill Mike Pence" also had guns. By that logic, the security and Secret Service should have popped off at everyone that was in that crowd. Everyone that was there should have got two to the chest and one to the head.
Like, what do you expect when you threaten a government official? Ooh, okay,
Right.
just using their own words. Uh,
They did not comply with law enforcement. Since they did not comply with law enforcement, all of them should have got. But but it doesn't. It's not. So this is the other thing. This is the other thing. I want people to feel safe in their community. I am for strict gun control legislation, but I am also for the abolishment of ICE. ICE needs to go. And until ICE goes, then hey, I have no problem with people wanting to defend themselves and defend their neighborhoods.
Yep, and I think too, like one point I've heard from some people is like, well, a gun didn't save Alex Peretti, and this is something that I think we need to drill down on. Just people understand it's not. This isn't even necessarily about the weapon, the gun. It's understanding that what is needed and what is a collective response, and this matters whether you're talking about being armed or not. It is the idea that um, federal agents are less likely to engage in, or fascists are less likely to engage in violence against a large group rather than if you are, isolated and, not to like, I'm not trying to like, court, what is it? Post game quarterback Alex Pretti and the bravery they exhibited trying to protect that woman when they did. But I am saying that um, ICE or any other fascist is going to feel more emboldened to engage in that kind of violence only if they think they can get away with it. And large groups, they feel less able to do that, whether guns are involved or not. That's why when we talk about like being part of affinity groups, when you go to protest and making sure that you're part of you're not just going somewhere by yourself. That is probably the biggest safety measure you can take when you are stepping out into a volatile situation like this. And I really want our listeners really take that to heart. Um, I got a whooping from the Proud Boys back in 2020, and the main reason that happened is I separated from the group, and I was staying by myself, and I was easy to toss to the ground and get some licks on. So in any situation like that, don't try to be part of a larger collective, because that's where the safety comes from. Because as we saw with Alex Pretti, you could be carrying a sidearm, but if they see an opportunity to violate your rights, they will take it.
Facts. Absolutely. 100%. Um, yeah, I just stay safe, folks. That's the best. That's the only thing that I would want people. I want for people is to stay safe. Uh, stay alert, stay vigilant, stay safe. If you cannot do that, then do not put yourself in a position where you can get got. It will happen. They will. They will not only will it happen, they will then brag about doing it to you, and they will and not and they will celebrate it. They will celebrate, and they will call you a domestic terrorist. That man was a nurse. He was out here saving lives. And contrast that. I'm glad you brought up Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse excuse was for going out there with his AR was was pretending that he was going there to be a medic. He was going out there to be a medic. That was the lie that they helped they used to get him out of his charges. Meanwhile, a actual nurse who was trying to stop ICE from beating other people, ends up getting 10 shots from two different officers. He got 10 shots after the officers misfires his weapon. Crazy.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, one of the more disturbing, like this doesn't appear in all the videos, but one of the videos you could see like one of the ICE officers like clapping as they step away after this dude's gotten shot. Um, yeah, it's again, we put a fine point on it. Like, we've mentioned this on the show, but this is not hyperbole. Like, a lot of those Threepers and Proud Boys and stuff have been deputized by the state. There's a recent leak. Enrico Tarrio is an ICE agent. And yeah, we got to be careful because like these are these same goons, but they've been empowered by the federal government to be their personal goon squad. And so, you know, I thought again, thinking back to like what happened in 2020 here in the streets, the Proud Boys didn't shoot anybody, but if they all had ICE uniforms, do you think would they've maybe felt more emboldened to engage in that level of violence? Maybe,
Dog.
maybe,
They would have. They would have not only would they have felt. They would feel untouchable. Untouchable. They would feel like everything that they're doing they already feel like everything that they are doing is justified. They would be untouchable. They would.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The issue that I have now is that now one media. I need the media, and this is because we do media critique on this show. I need mainstream media to not let this slide. What we saw was a public execution. What we saw was domestic terrorism. This is not okay. It should not. It should not. It should not be. There should not in any way, shape, or form uh, ever be a moment where we're not when we're not telling the truth. That no, he did not. He was not violent. He wasn't violent. He wasn't. The narratives that's been out there that he went there to assault police officers. He did not brandish his weapon. He wasn't acting in a malicious manner. He did nothing wrong, and he was assaulted. This is that we need to make sure that we are keeping that energy, and we are making sure that we do not let them change the narrative of what this was. Because if we let them change the narrative, then they will continue to justify the death. They will justify any death that they find inconvenient. They find any of us inconvenient.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever they find any of us inconvenient, they will justify it, and we cannot allow that. We cannot let that stand.
No, absolutely.
But yeah.
Um,
Oh, but there is good news. There is good news. I don't know if you saw it last night. The main Nazi dude, got fired. He got
Greg
demoted.
Bovino, yep.
Yeah. So so and this is the other thing that we have to also keep in mind. Trump is a coward, but he also understands how perception works, right? He will lie to his own audience, but he doesn't want his audience being mad at him, right? He saw that they were getting bad publicity, and he was like, "Hey, why are we getting such bad press? Oh, we're getting bad press because the dude in the Hugo Boss Nazi outfit is acting like a Nazi. Oh man, get him out of here. We don't need this.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need this. Why would we have this?" And I'm like, you know what? I I'm it let it be said that 47 understands when will bad publicity will get you rocked. He's like, nah, I don't want this on my name. I don't want this on my name. So we need to make sure that we need to fire the person who's the face of it. Now, do I think that they're gonna double down or triple down or try to make things better? No. No, they will put another troglodyte in that position.
Oh yeah, somebody maybe a little bit more palatable, but yeah, that's
But no, they're what I think they're gonna do, and I didn't hear me now, quote me later. They're going to put a person of color in that position, and so that they can be like, "Hey, look, we're you know, don't blame us. Don't blame us. You gotta blame this guy. You see this guy? He's the one
Mhm.
that's actually running this situation." That's what in my heart of hearts, that's what I think they're gonna end up doing. It's like, hey, you can't blame us. It's this person who's actually running the Nazis now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But
But that's my speculation.
mhm. Yeah, that I mean that definitely would not be surprise me. And again, like, yeah, again goes back to that weird like the
Be surprised.
tokenized way they will weaponize identity politics.
Oh no, yeah. Don't be surprised if you see a person of color now running the Gestapo,
All right.
especially Italian person, not Italian person, a Latino person. They will do that.
All right, so I didn't actually have too much else to kind of report on today's show. I had some material to play on the back half, but is there any other things that you would like to hit on, Lawrence?
Man. Uh, I think the thing that's most scary is that they're trying to ignore the Fourth Amendment and saying that in and so I want people to watch themselves. This is the main thing is just watch yourself. They are going to lie and say that people that ICE officials can come into your house, right? With an administrative warrant, right? They don't need a judicial warrant. They only need an
Oh, that's
administrative
right.
warrant.
Yeah. That
Um,
whole leaked memo about how they could just like
yeah.
break into
Shout
your
out
house.
to
Yeah.
shout out to Jordan Cher, shout not Jordan Sheridan. Um, Shout out to Drop Site News, Kenny Klippenstein, Ryan Grimm, and others. Um, who basically got leaked memos of basically saying no, they are trying to uh without cause and without uh they are trying to legally make it legal for ICE to just roll up into people's houses without a judicial warrant. Be mindful of that. Be mindful of that. Record it. All those interactions because they cannot do that. They cannot do that. And if they lie, and they are legally allowed to lie to you, folks. They are legally allowed to lie to you.
Oh, yep,
Do not
that's
let
right. We saw that clip that went viral of that woman, the indigenous woman in Minnesota, where her DoorDash driver basically sought sanctuary because they were trying to tell her both the ICE and Minneapolis PD was saying that they could enter her house, which is legally untrue. And she was actually on the verge of giving up the person until their neighbors rallied around and helped them assert their rights and basically told them to F off. So,
that's also the other part of that story. I'm glad you brought that up. There's been multiple Minneapolis police officers that have been assaulted by ICE. There have been police officers who are off-duty police officers that ICE have ran down on.
that's true. Yeah. Hmm.
You know it. You know it. You know you're down bad. You know you're down bad when the police officers are like, "Dog, what are y'all doing?
Yeah. Geez. It's the
What are
same
y'all doing?"
department again that 5 years sparked the uprisings in 2020 is just
Yeah,
like ICE is going too far. It's just like,
guys, y'all are when you know it's bad when the National Guard. Also, this is another thing. This is another thing to show you what is going on. National Guard in Minneapolis was handing out hot chocolate and coffee to protesters, and they were doing it in bright neo green or whatever neon suits to show that they are not ICE. ICE is so horrible. Other state sanctioned officials, police officers, National Guard are like, dog, we have to do PR to show that we are not these monsters. You know how bad it is? You know how bad it
mhm,
is when other
yeah.
law enforcement is like, nah, son, we can't we're not associated with this. They're not like us. Okay. You know how bad that you know how down bad you gotta be? You gotta be down bad. You gotta be
Hmm.
down bad, bro. So shout out to okay, so I know that we talked about a lot about that and normally we don't talk about pop culture stuff and things of that nature, but I did want to bring this up. Um I don't know if me and you ever had a conversation about sinners. Like we had a conversation about sinners and how mainstream media um
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, it hasn't made enough money, and it actually blew
yeah,
like box
they
office
try to
records.
they try to downplay the success of that movie and all those things. I just wanted to the only reason why I'm bringing it up now is because Sinners was nominated for 16 Academy Awards.
16, yeah.
The
Hmm.
most for most movies were 14, and that was Titanic, La La Land, and I can't think of the other ones. The other ones. There's been most movies that's had 14. This is the first movie to ever have 16. So it's like, yeah, yeah. I just want to shout that out. I think that's amazing. Um, uh, it's still garbage that at the Critics' Choice Awards they gave Timothy Chalamet best male actor over Michael B. Jordan. I didn't speak on it at the time. I thought it was garbage. You know, it just is what it is. Um, and yeah, I hope everybody's happy. You know, in a few weeks we're gonna have Bad Bunny perform at the Super Bowl, and I get to see all the same people who complained about Kendrick Lamar. You couldn't understand what Kendrick Lamar was saying at the Super Bowl. I can't wait to see what y'all say about Bad Bunny when
Yeah,
he
no,
his
absolutely.
entire
Yeah.
performance is in Spanish. I can't wait. But
Hmm.
yeah, there's a few other things. Israel is still continuing their genocide. Uh, they killed, I think, three journalists, three to
Oh,
five journalists
yeah,
last week,
heard about that.
and it barely got any news coverage. Barely got any news coverage, and I thought that's crazy. Me and you also talked about doing a deep dive in why TikTok and other platforms are banning people from even mentioning Epstein, and been a recent development since the new owners of TikTok now are banning people from even mentioning the word
Oh,
Epstein.
I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so for those like the algorithms have hit, TikTok is thoroughly compromised. They've been banning and stripping content off the platform from a left-wing point of view or that reports on social justice. A lot of the Alex Pretti videos just got removed from TikTok. Again, this is a direct result of them being bought by, I believe it was Larry Ellison, correct? The same who's bought CBS.
Yeah, the Zionists, the Zionists. This is what happens when we let billionaires, when we are letting these multi-billionaires, when the millionaires who want you to go back to the mines and not think. They don't want you thinking. They just want you to wholeheartedly uh swallow their propaganda, owning media. And it's like they're like, nah, dog, we don't want y'all to see that. We don't want y'all to hear about it. Y'all can't even talk about it. And that, yeah, it's wild. Wild out here right now.
Mhm. So with that, I want to spend the last chunk of our show, and this might even go a little bit into my music show, which actually is appropriate for what it is. So on the same day Alex Pretti was killed, it was also the day that famed Marxist scholar Michael Parenti passed away. Now, something that a lot of revolutionary thinkers don't get to say. He lived a very full life. He passed away at the age of 92. Some of my listeners, you're probably most familiar with legendary The Yellow Tape, which for many, many people is one of their first like really big on roads into understanding anti-imperialist Marxist thought. And he really did have he was remarkably talented at explaining really complex concepts in a way that the layperson could understand. And I think especially in this resurgence of socialism in the last 10 years, his legacy really exploded in a way that, he was a very marginal figure for a very long time. But with the advent of both, again, the internet and this upsurge in American socialism and Marxism, uh, the lectures and writings of Michael Parenti have really um, gotten much more what's the word much more foot traffic than they had in previous years, and he's again staunch opponent of U.S. imperialism and was one of the few U.S. thinkers who really tried to explain actually existing socialist states and, kind of like try to be like more nuanced about them. And I wanted to close today's show with a YouTube creator who put together it's got lo-fi Michael Parenti. But I don't know, Lawrence, have you ever checked out the Yellow Tape or seen any of this stuff? I don't know if I've ever asked
I
you about that.
I haven't. I have to check out.
But we'll link to that. But yeah, I'm gonna spend this kind of get hearing some words from the man himself and Eco Justice Radio. I think did they reposted the legendary Yellow Tape, and I think that they eulogized him very well. Um, a prominent political scientist and culture critic. Um, Parenti discussed the intricacies of U.S. interventionism, the dynamics of capitalism, and the historical exploitation of the developing world. He challenged conventional narratives about poverty in the global South, asserting that these nations are not poor, but rather overexploited. That's probably one of his most famous quotes. These nations are not, what is it, underfunded, they're overexploited. Um, and then they go on to say, um, because the U.S. war machine is going after Venezuela, Greenland, Iran, Cuba, Nicaragua, Colombia. Who's next? This desire for hegemonic control from this failing empire will not stop until we all step up and make it stop. And this imperial boomerang, it's hitting us in Minnesota, on the streets here in Los Angeles, all the way to Maine. The violent methods to control and subdue smaller, weaker countries, disappearing intellectuals, activists, political leaders, like was seen in Guatemala in the 90s, where activists are unalived without any fear of accountability. Minneapolis. We did it to Vietnam, we did it to Iraq. Now we're doing it where next? Are we next, or we're next, or something? Okay. But yeah, this is going to be playing this back. Lawrence, thanks for joining us today. And everybody else, until next time, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.